As the R1 Championship Circus moves on to the latest venue, the Nurburgring Grand Prix circuit, a few questions come to mind. Does the Boulin Wall have the championship completely clinched? Will anyone shock us with an unexpected win in these last couple races? Will Brad actually practice this week? These questions and many more will be answered. It's the Formula Forza Pre-Race Podcast by JET Motorsport. Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Ryan McDowell, gamertag Siphon68. I'm joined again by Magnum278, Derek James, and WennaJ, Mr. Practice himself, Brad James.
I hate you guys.
We do have a special guest with us tonight. We're joined by Hunter Wood, also known as TLR Eclipse, co-founder of Tech Life Racing. Thanks for joining us tonight, Hunter.
Hello, gentlemen.
All right, so how about we just get straight to the Infineon results? That's what we're here for. So we'll just start talking about qualifying straight away. What I found interesting about the Infineon qualifying was FMS Senna. He put in an early time that just looked like it was crushing everybody else. It was immediately in the 1:15s, and I knew that when I first saw that time go up that it would take a pretty mighty lap to bring that down. He did most of his qualifying on the first and second day of qualifying, and that time pretty much stayed there, his 1:15 and a half or thereabouts. So it was 1:15.682. And we saw people get a little close to it. The Boulin Wall with 5% power restriction ended up going a 1:16.055. We saw XPR Roadrunner from Serpent Racing go a 1:15.903. But no word from Inflames, who was really the only other competition that we were waiting for. With the past two races, FMS Senna has been really gunning for pole and has looked good on it up until the last day of qualifying when at the race before we had Alex P come in and take the pole by the slimmest of margins in the 2013 season. And then in the last I kid you not, in the last 15 minutes of qualifying, minutes to go, Inflames pops in with a 1:15.341 and just stuns the whole grid by going straight to pole in the last few minutes. We knew he had been doing some times, and we knew that they were going to be close. We just didn't know. We knew he'd be in Group A. He was unrestricted. We knew that would be the battle. We just didn't know exactly where it would come in at. He really does throw down a bit of a trump card here, 0.3 quicker than FMS Senna, and really no time for FMS Senna to respond. Did Senna leave time on the table? Who knows? That's on Senna's shoulders, not ours. But going down the rest of the grid there, we've got XPR Overdrive with a great qualifying performance. He ends up 5th on the grid. TLR Eclipse, that's Hunter with us, ends up 6th. That was a great performance from him out of that BMW, which is kind of characteristically tail happy, and on a track this inch perfect. That's a great performance from him in that. BTR Villanov, then, that's Kyle Litherland. He ends up 7th. Johnny Two Shoes with a 5% power restriction was 8th. And then further down the grid, notable drivers that didn't expect to see them quite so high. James Hall ends up 10th after several big improvements from him with a 1:16.689. Also, WennaJ does put in about 3 laps and gets a 12th in Group A. Also, Rock Lewis S. subbing in for our UK Shadower, Chris Shaw, as most of us call him now because he changes his gamer tag so often. Rock Lewis S. ends up a 15th. That bumps Magnum 278 here, Derek, to B1 in the final few minutes there.
You see, Flames bumped me. I blame Flames for that because I was sitting there 5 minutes till qualifying it and watching it, refreshing, making sure nothing happened. I look away at, I'm not kidding you, at like 11:58. I come back at midnight. I'm in Group B. Needless to say, I was extremely sad.
You can't really have the Did you expect Inflames not to qualify? Is that what you were hoping for?
At that point, yes. With like 4 minutes left in qualifying, I was like, you know what? If he hasn't set one by now, he's not going to set one. So I just kind of walked away and was like, cool, I'm making Group A. Because I knew I could have went quicker. I did during the race, But I didn't have much time left to set another time, so I was like, all right, I'll just stick with that one and see what happens. And I was kind of happy that I was in Group A still. And then I received the shaft from In Flames there.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, In Flames was always going to be in Group A. You know, I would say that the shocker is either James Hall, which you can't be really too upset about, scores the most points, and he is your teammate. Rock Lewis S., to me, is really the surprise entry into Group A. He hasn't stayed... I mean, at this level of competition, it really does take staying in there and getting a lot of seat time to stay competitive in this, and not saying that just to get into Group A is quite an effort to get there. So to me, that's what got you bumped, is the surprise. I mean, what is that there? Half a tenth. Rock Lewis S out qualified you for the last slot in Group A there. So I don't know that I would be right. All right, so let's move forward then from qualifying. We'll take a look at what happened in the race then. We'll talk about Group A here. In the race itself, first, let's go back to when we were making the calendar for the 2013 season. Last year, this slot would have been filled by Mazda Laguna Seca, and it's also a track that's kind of difficult to pass at. Lots of sand sections. You do have to drive a pretty narrow line. So in some respects, the tracks are very similar. When we came to Forza 4 and Infineon was on there, at first I was really excited about the aspect of any new tracks. After driving Infineon a few times myself, and by a few I mean several dozen races around this track, and I saw that in public lobbies, more so than normal, it was like half the field crashed out in Infineon. Something, it was like full moon always at Infineon or something like that. Like, everybody just lost their minds at this track. And then I realized that it really just is that this track, even though it doesn't look like it, it's not a concrete jungle or anything like that, it's almost like Monaco in that you have to be inch perfect. You know what I mean? Like, you got to get so close to the tires in turn one. You got to get just right on turn 3, or you're off the fast line. And if you're off the fast line, that's it. You know what I mean? You're losing seconds, even though it doesn't look like you should be, because it upsets the car. You've got to recorrect it, get it back in line, and that's what causes it here. It's really difficult to pass here, and we chose the long layout, which is probably the easiest one to pass at. I mean, IRL has that massive chicane in it, which it just, you might as well just retire half the field, right from the grid. But we chose the long circuit because we felt that would be at least a compromise, and we did want to move on from Mazda Laguna Seca. It is an epic track, but we got to give Infineon a fair shake. So we put this one in sort of hesitantly, and I will say that after 3 laps, I wasn't sure that we had made the right choice. We had, first lap, several incidents. We had Scurry 76 and XY 101, both Caterham Team GB drivers, retired from the race on the first lap. We did have Eclipse also early in the race. Hunter, we had you lag out from the race. And then later in the race, we had Johnny Two Shoes lag out. Now, that's not saying that it's the track's fault, but it was just that we had so many retirements very quickly. I mean, Rock Lewis S was also out before the race was even to a quarter distance. So we had 5 retirements in total, and that's before we even talk about any of the action that happened. Right off the line, we had FMS Senna just shoot right in front of In Flames. We had our 3 starts, so 2 restarts. Every start, Senna was able to get ahead of In Flames. And on one of the starts, we had XPR Roadrunner in that extreme launching Ferrari. He was able to get around In Flames as well. So on the actual start, it was just Senna that got by, and then it was a game of just catch me. So Senna was running, I would say, a good majority of the race up until about lap 29 or so of 50 in the lead. and was looking just incredibly consistent. The times between In Flames and Senna were just dead even. And then further back the pack, we had Overdrive, Villeneuve, and the Boulenwall all fighting it out over fourth place. XPR Roadrunner was sort of out on his own in third with a decent gap to the leaders and a pretty big gap behind him. So that he wasn't really in danger of falling off the podium if that's where he wanted to finish. And then behind that, we had this great battle going between James Hall and BTR Blazin from KHMR1. That was a really good battle for pretty much the entire race. That wreck that took out Rock Lewis S. Brad, was that a rear ending from you? That's what it looked like from the spectator camera slot there. What happened there? Can you fill us in on exactly what happened with that?
Okay, I was like 800 feet behind him going in, or like at corner 1, and then going into corner 2. And then I start braking like at the rumble, where the rumble strip on the left begins. And I hit that braking point, and all of a sudden I'm like right up on him for some reason. And I was like, oh shit, so I like tried not to lock him up, and then basically just, hit him from behind.
Okay. Yeah, he initially launched a steward's inquiry and then later revoked it that day, so it ended up not coming to anything. I mean, sometimes he's racing and incidents happen, and at Infineon they're more likely than normal. Further up, the Johnny Two Shoes lagging out was a big shock. I mean, he did have the 5% power restriction, but he was just behind the Boulenwall in 7th. So that was a bit surprising to see that happen. He hasn't lagged out of a race this year. So unfortunate that it happens, but sometimes those things do happen. We have to kind of treat those like mechanical failures, right? Like the game doesn't have your engine blows up or you get a flat or something like that. So we kind of have to just treat that as a retirement like that. Then up at the front, we've got FMS Senna goes into the pits at about midpoint through the race. And Flame stays out for about 4 laps before coming in. I think he probably should have stayed out for longer. He ended up having the fastest lap of the race. He went a 1:15.553 by the end. Senna's fastest was a 1:15.797. I think the In Flames should have stayed out there longer, but what ended up happening, we knew it was going to be close. As Flames was coming out of the pit, you get just this, Senna comes by, really hauling from, it's full throttle from the back of turn 11 to basically turn 2 where the pits, spits you out there. But you get Senna just running by at full speed, and there was no defending that In Flames could have done, and Senna went right back into the lead. And it stayed that way until maybe lap 35, 36, somewhere in there. Not long after the pit cycle, and Senna went wide in turn 8. The S is on the back half of the course. When he went wide there, In Flames just stuck to his line and was able to get around for the lead. And then it was just a matter of growing a gap. It looked like Senna he tried to press to keep that gap close, but then made a couple of mistakes. One picking up some damage just 2 laps after that, and then another one just at the top of the hill there at turn 3. He does a full spin out with like 2 laps to go. So it does end up In Flames gets the win. FMS Senna gets 2nd. XPR Roadrunner 3rd. Overdrive does hang on to 4th. Villeneuve 5th. Boulenwall with his 5% power restriction ends up 6th. James Hall, battle of a lifetime there with BTR Blazin, does get his best result in 7th. So that was, the notable finishes there. That was quite good. Brad, you ended up 10th, which really wasn't so bad. Due to some retirements and whatnot, but still 10th place. That's pretty good points there. 42 points overall for you. So then Group B then, Derek. So you had the pick of the litter then for grid positions, didn't you? You started right at front, and you want to give us a run through of what happened then in the Group B race?
Yes, not as much man against man racing action as you would expect in Group B. Normally Group B is either close or closer than Lobby A is, because usually in Lobby A, somebody from the start or 2 or 3 guys like run away, and the rest of the field is left to kind of battle it out in 2 or 3 small pockets of drivers. But Usually Group B is a lot closer than that. Everybody's kind of bunched together. But this week, like, I don't know if it was just the tightness of the track or nobody really getting much experience here in full-on for serious race conditions, like, I don't know, like in traffic. But there was a lot of damage taken by drivers, and there was quite a bit of lag outs, which is very unfortunate to see. At the start of the race, yes, I did end up getting pole for that, unfortunately. You can't really say it's unfortunate because it's the best position to be out there for Group B, but it was unfortunate, kind of in my case. But at the start, we did our 2 restarts, partly because there's a couple slide-offs in the first corner, the first 2 times, I think our first restart, somebody lagged into somebody else while we were waiting for the final countdown to start the race. But the final start we had, we all got off the line, actually got through the first corner perfectly fine, which I did not expect. And then we get into the second corner towards the crest of the hill, and Ferrari Fanatic 9 gets run into by one of the JRM guys, who's either S. Lamont or Fire Dragon. I don't quite remember. It slipped my mind. But he catches damage, and his race is done from then on. He's got 100% rear and 100% sides. He's done. First lap, Ferrari Fanatic's retired. As we get going, slowly we start losing people. First, we lost 100th Ty from a lag out, then Penumbra from a lag out, and then unfortunately BTR Raikkonen from LBM Motorsport. Lucas, you really don't want to see somebody like that. He's a nice guy. It's kind of hard to see him lag out like that because he had actually qualified decently well, and he was fighting pretty good right before he lagged out. And then we lost Chicken McHaggard to our final lag out. WRC Cape retired because of damage and then had to end up leaving the race. And as the race went on, we cycled through our first set of pit stops, and Adam Watson actually coming out of the pits, trying to avoid somebody else while coming out, actually hits the pit exit wall and gives his car too much damage to continue, so he pulls the car back around and parks it. So at that point, both JET Motorsport International drivers are done. That is our second full team retirement because of damage between Lobby A and Lobby B. And as the race goes on, the field spreads out even more. FW Mastodon from JET Motorsport Fort Wayne in his first race, taking it easy, making sure he finishes kind of off the pace a little bit, but clean nonetheless. Goes, I think it was, final count was 4 laps down by the end of the race. But as the race goes on, Chaos in Action and Bloody Kane and BTR Snaky and BTR Kanan, those 4 guys are battling it out for 2nd through 5th. And as they start cycling through pits, people start, dropping off. Kanan drops off because he pitted. Snaky drops off, and then Kane drops off, and that leads Chaos. And Chaos, normally a late pitter, so you kind of expected him to go that long. Comes out and actually gets damage. I don't remember when, but I know I think it was the last corner or the little kink before the last section of the track down into the hairpin. I think he slid off and actually hit the wall, causing him terminal damage. So, well, not terminal, but enough to slow him down a lot. So he was way off the pace. And I came in, pitted, and stayed out in front. The only people I saw the entire race was lap traffic. And at the end of the race, once I had crossed the line, Slamont 24 finished 6th. Yes, 6th, 3 laps down. Chaos in Action finished 2 laps down. And BTR Kanan finished a single lap down, a solitary lap by the end of the race. They're the top 3. The only car is able to actually stand the lead lap that race. It's not really something you want to see. I mean, it's kind of depressing to know that only the top 3 managed to kind of stay out of damage. Yeah, we're able to finish the race completely clean, and I mean, it's not saying anything about the league. The racing was good it was just, I don't really want to blame the track, but I will say this: Infineon has been the only track I have been to this entire year where I have felt that the Acura was about 9 miles wide. That's normally something you'd feel like the Bentley or the Panos, where they're generally wider cars. But I had so much trouble in the first few practice sessions at keeping it on the track that it got kind of aggravating. And I mean, like I said, I wouldn't say it's really the track's fault. It was more of these cars really aren't fully tailored to race here. I mean, it's not a track built specifically for like prototype racing or Formula 1 where you got really high-speed cars. This is kind of a medium-speed track, and it's very tight. It's built for like GT cars and touring cars. So I mean, you really don't. It's a bit of a challenge to run a prototype there.
Yeah, we're going to talk about points here.
Oh, yes, yes.
All right, here we go. 1 through 5 for drivers here is first, obviously, the Bull Ball 5 with 662 with a ridiculous gap to second with Alex P, which it's more than the points you can get, more than the maximum points you can get in a race between first and second. And then to third, it is BTR Villeneuve, fourth in Flames, and fifth XPR Roadrunner for Serpent Racing. And then for team points, in first still is Pennzoil Zexel, second Serpent Racing, third rather, Bosch Tech Racing, fourth LLBM R1, and fifth Aces Wild.
In the driver points, we have Alex P and BTR Villeneuve, second and third. There's only 5 points between those two drivers. It's kind of shocking to me. Alex has missed 2 races, and so far Villeneuve has had perfect attendance. But in fourth, you've got In Flames, who's just another 6 points behind that, and he missed 2 races. So he's climbing up the order. I guess the question I have is, where's Alex and In Flames going to end up at the end of the season? Is In Flames going to end up second? I mean, at this point, you got to assume that the Boulenwall has... I mean, unless he makes a serious, mistake here, it looks like the championship is his to lose. I mean, it's totally in his hands. You can't say that it's anybody else's race at this point. But for second...
Another thing to add...
Yeah.
Senna is 2 points behind Roadrunner. And then below that, Johnny Two Shoes is tied with Jack in points. And there's 3 races left. This is going to be interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
Very interesting.
All right, so let's get into the V8 supercars then. Derek, go ahead.
Yes, our V8 series now merged with us with LLBM for this first race, the GP of Montserrat at the Iberian circuit. We had not made the announcement yet, so this is still LLBM era, but qualifying so far during the championship, again, they're the Boulenwall of the V8s, XPR Venom and Alex P locking out the front row again for Serpent Racing, with XPR Venom with a 51.478 lap and Alex P nearly, let's say a full tenth behind him at a 51.548. The only one coming close to them was MXR Shiwo with a 51.853, but still quite impressive speed coming from the XP or the Serpent Racing team. And the race started off, it was a tight first corner, so we went through our one allotted restart very quickly, but not as much damage as you'd expect. But there were a few cars that did catch a bit of damage and end up being crippled and having to park it. TLR Eclipse Hunter lagged out, unfortunately. Yes, Samurai Slider caught damage. Shiwo actually lagged out very late in the race. I think it was either 6 or 7 laps to go, which was very surprising considering he was actually in the lead at the time when he had lagged out. The actual pit stops had cycled through, and he was in the lead when he had lagged out, which is very unfortunate. He would have been the first one to dethrone the Serpent Racing teams. James Hall, Mid-Lanzetta, Speed 6, Beard 1, and all the way up to, I believe maybe Scalzi had caught damage and were a little bit off the pace. But as the race concluded, XPR Venom takes the win for Serpent Racing with his teammate Alex P finishing in second. And in third, BTR Snake from BTR Team Seabon finishing third. I Capitalized finishing fourth, and BTR Villeneuve finishing fifth. Brad, you have the Hockenheim race results. How did Hockenheim go?
All right, let me start off with qualifying here. And first, once again, the Serpent Racing boys of XPR Venom and Alex P, they're both with a 44.0 there. And then the next person in third has a 44.7. I don't know about you, but that's a crazy gap from second to third. Usually you think the top guys should be pretty close to each other, but a whole 7/10, seems a little ridiculous to me. And then fourth, we got two guys from BTR, McNish and Snaky. And then I'm going to move on to the results here. Seems a little crazy. Top 7 people stayed the same. Snaky didn't show up for the race, so you can exclude them, but when everybody moved up a position behind him to start, they all stayed in the same position. And then person finishing in 8th, NFS Jordan, moved up 3, and then other than that, if you look at the website, as a matter of fact, it looks like a sea of red to me. Like, if you count, there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people that are red out of 33. That's less than a third of the people moving up positions, which is a little odd. But I mean, I guess you could say it's to be expected since it's a new series, and it's hard to figure out setups and stuff, unless you're amazing at doing setups. But going on to the race, actually what happened, I didn't participate in Group A or B. I was in C Lobby, and C Lobby was like 5 people, so there wasn't as much competition as I would want there to be. I don't know what happened to Group A or B, so Derek, you want to expand on that?
Well, I can't really expand much farther either because I was lag hit on the first lap and retired and went to the kitchen to get some snacks. So I pretty much missed the entire race. So I can't really expand on that either. So this is awkward.
That's what BTR Snacky did. Well, actually, I can shed a little bit of light on this because I hopped in for like the last half of the race and ended up watching it from a spectator slot. I think that was Tough Kid that ended up he quit out of the race, or he retired from the race and then quit from pit lane. So I took his spot in the race as spectator, and XPR Venom and Alex P had a good race, but really only with each other. MXR Shiwu was back several seconds from the leaders, and BTR McNish holding down fourth. He did a great job staying close to MXR Shiwu there, but really, like Brad said, the top 7, no position change. It's kind of shocking, actually, that you start 4th, you finish 4th. You start 5th, you finish 5th. That's kind of a little crazy that there's no position changes there. The battle of the race had to be BTR Villeneuve and the Dynamic Uno. As I watched, it was like half the race, BTR Villeneuve was all over the back of the Dynamic Uno, and right at the end, they were just thousandths of a second difference in finishing times there. So that was a really, really close finish. So maybe that the top 7 not changing positions is a little bit deceiving as to, it certainly wasn't a boring race. It was a pretty exciting race to watch, actually, other than the front runners just kind of off in their own world, kind of battling each other. There's no way that Alex P and Venom were going to risk not banking 190 team points again. But yeah, that's what I saw from the end of Group A there, a good battle between Villeneuve and the Dynamic Uno there.
Brad, we have our points run out.
My fault. My mic was screwed up there. And first and second, the Serpent Racing boys. XPR Venom opening up a lead here on Alex P by 20 points. He's got 390 and Alex P's got 370. Down to the next person, BTR Villeneuve. He's got 264. So, I mean, that's a pretty big gap there. 100 points from third to second. So, I don't know about you guys, but I can see Serpent Racing just running away with the championship if they already aren't. I mean, which I think they are.
I'm pretty sure team championship concern-wise, they could not show up for the rest of the year and still win the team championship. It's that big of a gap.
Well, I mean, as a matter of fact, they have 760 points in 4 races. Bullenwall has less than that in what? How many races have we done? 9? So
A little different formula,
Yeah.
though, but yeah.
But still.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the first, Serpent Racing, 760 points, and in second, BTR Seban Racing with 380 points there. Is that what that... I mean, it's like
Yes.
half the points.
It's just insane to me.
It is a stomping.
I think there's no real reason to discuss the Manufacturers' Championship anymore, being that
Holden's just run away with
there's
it.
just twice as many Holdens out there as Ford.
There's like 4
so-
times as many Holdens.
Well, the way the manufacturer
Well-
championship works, though, is it takes the top 2, right? But because Serpent Racing are running Holden, that means Holden has a perfect record so far as well. Ford has done a little better than the best Ford team, and they've got 469 points, which puts them about 100 points above even second place team. So, you know, that certainly helps out a bit for Ford. But yeah, there's almost no competing with Serpent Racing in those Holdens.
Do you guys think that somebody else is going to win a race? Or even get, like, second?
I told you, dude. Shiwo was leading at Montserrat before he lagged out. He is really the only one within shooting distance of the XPR team. I don't know if there's a little like setup exchange there. I don't know if they're like, hey, you give
Well, I
us
mean,
a setup.
she was in the Ford, so that doesn't mean that I know, but that doesn't mean they didn't make one for him.
They're basically the same car underneath, so.
But I mean, you can't just like here have this.
Yeah, you're right. But he's tuned that car in a way to where he's pretty close to what they can do. So in my mind, he's really the only one that is within striking distance of them. I mean, he was leading a race and he lagged out. I mean, that's very unfortunate. He was leading the race, meaning he would have won if he had stayed in. I mean, who knows what would have happened. But if he had stayed consistent, he would have won. And I think that would have been a blow to Serpent Racing, and that would have, you know, sort of dethroned them a little bit. It would have been a blow to their pride. I mean, they've held out every podium in every qualifying front row every race this year, and if Shiwo had been able to throw the wrench into their plan, people might have like looked at it and went, "Huh, they're not as mighty as we thought they are."
Now, we can't say that Serpent Racing has totally dominated qualifying. They haven't won every pole so far. BTR Jimmy Skills for IRT did take the pole at Sebring, didn't he? So he's another one that if I don't know where he stands. He's certainly not up the order in the championship. So I don't know if he's just out of the game, not able to participate or what. But he could be another one that could do it if he comes back. If he comes back and starts putting in races, Serpent Racing may have some competition out there. But like he said, MXR Shiwu appears to be the only one that can really take the fight to them. And he's only in fourth because of that his poor performance at Sebring and at Iberian. 37 points 2 in a row. Other than that, though, he's been third at his other showing. So, you just got Villeneuve up there from pure consistency's sake in third. So you guys want to do community here?
Yes, we have our 2 videos of the week. My video of the week was from GoPro. It was their coverage of the streets of Long Beach, the Formula Drift event, and the IRL event. And it's just, there's a couple of interviews in there, a couple little blurbs from drivers, but it's just awesome footage of drifting and IRL. I mean, there's not much to really say to it. There is some slightly dubsteppy music because it is a GoPro video, and that's required. And so pretty much it's just awesome action. I'd suggest you check it out. Brad, what's your video?
My video of the week is the Formula Forza full race video for the Sonoma GP, if I can speak, which I can't. I don't know how we didn't notice until now that we've never had a Formula Forza video as a video of the week. That just doesn't make sense to me. So, I mean, it came out Wednesday, so I recommend you check it out. I mean, we did talk about it for a while on here, but if you actually want to see the action that we're speaking of, check it out.
All right, this week we are shaking it up. We have added a couple articles for you guys to read. Well, one of them's they're both picture articles. There's barely any reading involved. The first one is a Nissan 350Z from StanceNation.com, and it's just a Slam 350Z. I thought it was cool, and I liked reading the article, so check that one out. But the second one, I would say the more important one, I Am the Speed Hunter. It is an article that's just all pictures and a short interview from their photographer, Rob Blank. It's just amazing, amazing photography of race cars, street cars. I think there's one street car in there, but it's all race cars and awesome action shots. And he talks about, like, in the short interview, his favorite styles of photographing, is that a word? Shooting is more like it, of shooting race cars and the scenes around the track. And it's just a cool little interesting interview with some amazing pictures. Now, Ryan, we have an interview, don't we? We have a guest.
Yes, we do have our special guest, and for those that know him, he's been quiet pretty much this entire interview. And for those that know him, he is fairly quiet when he races. He does go Stig mode quite often. We're talking about Hunter Wood, that's co-founder of Tech Life Racing. So, as a veteran of the Formula Forza league, series, whatever you want to call it, as a veteran, you've seen us grow from fairly humble beginnings to kind of where we are now. And how would you describe your experience so far, and what's been your favorite part about the R1 Championship?
Well, from a personal standpoint, it's been very pleasant to see it go from, the humble only 7 teams and 14 drivers in the first season back in Forza 3 to, numerous teams, especially some, very fast guys. And it's impressive, I think, that we've managed to see it grow into this, awesome series of, now we have the LLBM included too. And it's amazing that, the social aspect of it too has gotten bigger. Things like your Facebooks and Twitters and getting the word out there that, this is one of the better run and I think probably popular organizations of racing within Forza Motorsport. And to answer the second question, my favorite part of the R1 series probably has to be just the qualifying, I think, because when you're sitting there and you're, clicking off laps trying to beat, other, rivals that you've maybe come across, for a good, in the first season, you and Lewis are probably very good rivals, and then along into, jumping into the second season, it kind of maintained that consistency of you and seeing that kind of rivalry growth over 3 seasons, I think, is just awesome to see. It shows that there are teams willing to stick around and, fight through everything they can to try and win that championship at the end.
Yeah, the formula certainly hasn't stayed the same. We've made rule changes each year, and in the first year we had mid-season rule changes as well, because we originally didn't start with our power restrictions, and many from the outside, that's the one piece of our regulation that they're, sort of confused about or don't get why we have power restrictions or whatnot. And you're not treading on any toes here. What's your thought on how we do success ballast in this game? Like Super GT, in the real world, Super GT does a weight success ballast, right, to ensure that it's mixed up and the fans are seeing different things.
Right.
And it still doesn't stop. I mean, the fastest guys still win. What's your thought on our take of a success ballast in the power restriction?
I think it's worked pretty well so far, considering that, we've had multiple winners so far. You look at the championship so far, you've got, guys like Alex P stepping up. You got guys like In Flames coming in out of nowhere, at giving that fight to Bolin, who's just, seemed to dominate the championships. And then you got people such as Senna, even in the mid-season, the switch there, and watching him win back-to-back races was quite impressive, something we hadn't seen since, last year. And then you always can't count the Serpent Racing boys. I think you've seen Roadrunner just step it up quite a bit, and I think, given the right circumstances, I think he's got a pretty good shot at maybe getting a win here at the last couple races. With the
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
In the way the balancing works is you do have to play that strategic game, which Bolin, I think, has executed beautifully. You look at how he's managed to, even with a 10% restriction at the British Grand Prix, he still managed to finish pretty high up in the field, and I think that right there shows just how impressive the balancing can actually be. And you look at how it's played out, and I think it works better than people want to believe, but it just creates great action on track, and it's just so impressive to see that happening in such a short amount of time.
All right, thanks for that. Yeah, for those that don't know what we're talking about, our power restrictions, how they work, a really quick overview here. What we noticed in the very first season is that the same three people, namely myself when I was a driver, Hunter here, and one other, Rock Lewis S., was pretty much a done deal. I mean, it was almost like what V8 supercars are looking at right now. You could predict for the next 8 races who's going to win those races. If it's not a Serpent Racing, it's going to be a shock, and that's how it was shaping up to be in the early season of the 2011 R1 Championship. So we made a decision very early. All the top guys got together, all the teams got together, and we talked about what we could do. So we came up with this power restriction idea. The idea is that if you win a race, that's a 10% power restriction for the next race. If you're second or third, that's a 5% power restriction for the next race, and it does stack. So let's say you're the fastest guy in the world by miles.
In flames.
If you win a race, you get 10% power restriction. And if you win the race, even with that 10% power restriction, you're going to go to 20% power restriction. So very quickly, it won't take long, even if you're the fastest guy in the world, it won't take very long for you to get balanced into an area where you really do have competition and you got to work for those wins. We haven't had a driver champion yet that wasn't power restricted. The other caveat to this is that there is, if you finish off podium, so 4th or lower, you remove 5% of your power restriction, and that counts whether you make the race or not. So if you're just absent, you get off 5% power restriction. So it will go away, and there's this balance of when to use power restriction, which tracks are going to be best for it, and you start lining up those tracks. Like the very end of the season, almost nobody wants to have power restriction for Le Mans, where your 87% of the time spent on the track is wide open throttle. So you've got to have every ounce of horsepower you can get. But some tracks, like Hunter talked about, the British GP, wasn't so affected by a power restriction. So anyway, that's the quick overview of how our power restrictions work. And if you look at our standings, the points scored in blue are power restricted races. There is one other caveat to our power restrictions, and that's that we'll call it a lucky podium. Your first time podium is immune. So if you happen to, course of events or whatever, case in point would be BTR Kanan at Silverstone ended up 3rd. That would just be, it doesn't make sense. Like right now he's sitting 17th in a 3-way tie for 17th, but being 17th in the championship, is it right to really power restrict him for getting podium once? No. So we'll give one immunity, and then the power restrictions come into play. So right now, if you look at the top 8 drivers, actually, since we have a tie at 7th, the top 8 drivers all have had power restriction at one point or another during this championship, and I don't expect that to change. If anything, I expect XPR Overdrive, who's currently sitting 9th, to pick up some power restriction. So anyway, let's get back to our interview here, because I'm very interested to hear what Hunter has to say. I'm most interested in, how did you become involved with Tech Life Racing? Tell us about that.
Well, back in 2007, when Forza 2 first launched, I was just dorking around in the public lobby and happened to meet a friend of mine who now we've known each other quite a long time, Bone Cruiser. We found a common interest, and we decided, hey, we've been racing Aston Martins for so long. Let's create a team. So we broke down and created a team, and we called it Tech Life Racing because we were interested in the life of racing. So that's where the name comes from. And we started exploring other championships that were very feeble and early stages of Forza 2 being launched. So we then officially were like, okay, let's create our own. Let's try something different. And we ended up organizing several endurance championships with S-Class cars at the time. We had 2 seasons, and both were very well organized, I thought. And people kept coming back trying to say, hey, we're gonna, what's next? And so in coming into Forza 3, we launched the GT1 Championship, which was every race was a 1.5 hour race in which pitted the Corvette versus the Aston Martin in the DBR9 and C6R, and and we've had a few members from there even join Formula Forza. So it started out just as this simple little, hey, let's just have fun and race together, and kind of turned so much more into that. And then once I heard about Formula Forza, I realized, hey, I wanted TLR to be a staple team, a team that's going to be in every season and try and push to win a championship, and almost succeeded in the first season, and feel like, we still have it in us at TLR to maybe try and, get into the championship fight once again. And it just, we expanded several different drivers. Like last season, we fielded 3 teams, and we kind of wanted to get back to our roots. So in this season, we only fielded 1. But it's been a wild ride, and I think it just goes to show that anything can happen.
You talked about your endurance championships that you formed, and Formula Forza itself, isn't a 12-hour or multi-stint endurance races, but they are hour-long races. And when you compare that with the public lobby experience that you get from the game out of the box, it feels like endurance, doing an hour-long race at these tracks that you got to be practically inch perfect. But where does that stem from? I guess my question is, what's your favorite form of motorsport in actual motorsport that you watch?
Well, being a huge fan of Le Mans and watching it every year, all through the entire day, which is incredible. I've come to like the American Le Mans Series and what is now known as the World Endurance Championship. I've started watching every race and going back and watching old races, and I just find the idea that it takes, not just the car being fast, but the whole team. It's a true team effort. You have 2 to 3 drivers at every event, and you gotta have perfect pit stops, and you're not just doing it once or twice. You look at 12 hours of Sebring, you're doing at least 12 pits there, every hour, maybe more, if you have a problem. And I just see the test of man and machine, just this throughout an epic struggle of hard battling against not only yourselves but other cars on the track. And the multi-class style makes it even that much more exciting to watch, because you see the P1s and the and the P2s racing around and zipping around all these GT cars while they're having maybe a 7 train car battle going on. And you look at it and just think, what's not to love? You think, why wouldn't you want to like that kind of racing? It's just the ultimate endurance test. And you think back to how long that it's been going on, and you think, it's a great history of manufacturers proving themselves. Back when McLaren first started to become its own type of GT-based platform, they brought out the F1 and raced it at Le Mans and proved that hey, we can build great cars too, as well as Formula One. And it's a test for, I think, manufacturers and drivers, and that's what I find just so fascinating, and love that type of racing.
Well, getting back to Forza Motorsport, let's talk a little bit about this season in the Formula Forza R1 Championship. With the change to a draft pick for manufacturers, meaning you can't just pick any manufacturer you want. You can't just say, I'll drive the 787. Teams were ranked, and the teams that needed the boost were able to pick their manufacturer first with a limit of 2 teams each. So now with us going to that format, from the first season you've gone from driving the Audi R15 to the second season driving the Aston Lola, and now you're driving the BMW V12 LMR. How do you feel this car compares to the others, and how happy are you with this manufacturer choice?
Well, if I may speak about the draft real quick, I think it's proven that it can create close competitive racing. I mean, you look at the guys that are driving the Bentleys or the Pinards, a car that people don't expect to be up there as far as like times, and it just proves that it can work, and that it is a stabilizing element that just breeds more close racing that you want to hopefully see on the track. And I think qualifying shows that every week, where we have these incredible close qualifying times with cars that you just don't expect. And I think it helps, spread out the field, as manufacturers, because last season you looked at it and, it was almost an Acura fest. You saw all these Acuras, and this year it's all the different manufacturers across the board are showing up and competing, and it's, awesome to see that. And I think the BMW itself actually has been a very interesting car to drive, because it feels so slippery at times, but then it just has that incredible speed that I think it keeps me right up there as far as qualifying, and hopefully we can continue to improve, maybe trying to find the right handling setup, which for Germany and Italy coming up is going to prove to be a pretty good undertaking. I feel like the car itself has got much more potential than I think I've been able to pull out of it. Speaking with Drake Hellspawn, who ran it last year, and watching him set some pretty cool pole times around a couple different tracks. I looked at it coming into the draft thinking it came down to BMW or Ferrari, and I felt that the Ferrari was faster, but I thought the BMW had more potential with the way the tracks were laying out early, with a lot of speed tracks involved. I thought maybe we could extract the speed out of the BMW, which the Ferrari kind of lacks, I thought, and find a way to maybe throughout the season, once we got our feet wet, through the mid-season, and find that extra tenths. And I think a couple of my qualifying times now proves that you can be right up there with the big boys, and that the car itself actually has a lot more potential than people maybe get it credit for.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there has been a lot of teams learning about all these different cars, because the draft forced them to be exposed to cars that they probably wouldn't opt for initially. Like FMS Senna and the Lola. It probably would not have been his first pick had he been able to choose whatever he wants. Aces Wild and the Panos, the LOBM and the Toyota. I mean, all of these cars, it kind of makes the entire grid learn more about what the limits are of all of these cars. And I think that's kind of a cool thing to see. One thing I did want to ask you is, we've noticed a lot of kind of the Achilles tendon for you specifically as a driver this year has been really poor luck with connections this year, lagging out of 6 out of 8 races so far, and those retirements due to lagouts. Yeah, the retirements due to lagouts have got to be frustrating. So do you have any updates or news on your connections reliability for the future, the next 3 races?
Hopefully it's solid. I mean, it seems like every now and then it seems to have trouble, and I can't really root out what the problem is. I mean, I have a very nice router, which is from a very good solid connection. But I mean, you look back, and I haven't exactly proven a good track record, and hopefully we can move forward with that. But it's also a team game, and I look at Chaos in action, my teammate who's showed up for every race and has put in solid points, and I think given our standings right now, I mean we're not going to maybe fight for the top podiums positions, but I think we can definitely sneak in there near the end, and maybe try and pick up some spots, and hopefully maybe get some goodies there at the end.
You're only 30 points when you look at it 30 points away from getting into the top 10. You know, that's pretty good stuff. And then you got a ways to get to AVR in 9th. But yeah, you can see yourself in the top 10, and that's pretty respectable when you look at how competitive this season has got.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Hunter, for sitting in here and being a good sport with these these questions, questioning your connection and whatnot, right, with the hooligans. And I guess the next thing we have left to do is to open it right up into all four of us talking about predictions for Nurburgring Grand Prix. Derek, you wanna start us off?
All right, I'm gonna take a shot in the dark here. Well, I don't know if it's so much in the dark, but at the qualifying, 145 is our predicted average lap here on formulaforza.com, and usually we are a bit quicker than that, or a lot quicker at some tracks. But I'm gonna say qualifying for Group A, you're gonna see guys stretching all the way through the 43s, and maybe top 5, top 3 might stretch it into the 43s. I wouldn't say.
Oh no! Oh no! I'm
gonna
be
way less
before
than that.
people start laughing
about?
Hysterically.
See, I told you.
Yeah.
A shot in the dark.
Okay, so
you just cut me off here.
Derek,
Let's start
I
with
ran
the
a
baseline.
42.6 on my first try, and I don't practice.
Well,
okay, so let me kick it off with this, and then I'll throw it right back
guys.
to you. Last year poll from the one named Jack for AVR, which BTR Blazin just now changed back to the one named Jack. Last year in an Acura, ended up with a 139.461.
Apparently, I'm not cut out to be on the podcast.
We haven't had a track yet.
Bye, guys.
We haven't had a track yet that we haven't smashed the pole. So, with that being said,
37.
where do you think we're
37s.
I'm gonna go 38.5.
37s.
That's pretty specific, but you are a guest, so you can kind of do whatever you want. We have to be somewhat right, and already by now I have proved
Well, I mean,
that
I'm always
way
wrong, so.
Whoa, right?
Whoa, Ryan's Mr. Wrong, you make wrong pants here. He's like, yeah, I'm going to predict 33.
All right, well then... All right. Well, then I guess it's my turn to throw in a time here. Here's my thought. I think we're going to see a low 138 for pole. I'm going to be a little bit surprised. I still think it's in the realm of possibility to see a high 137, but I'm going to say that it's going to be a low 138, and I think the Group A cutoff is going to be at a 140.5, maybe even a little lower than that, maybe a 140.3 or something like that. For the Group A cutoff. I think it's going to be extremely competitive here because we've got a lot of cars that people have figured out how to get grip out of these cars that normally wouldn't have been thought to be capable of these times.
All right, well, let me ask the question.
So we'll see how
here.
wrong I am. Yeah.
Where is Bullen gonna finish?
Finishing quali.
That is
No, I mean in the
race-wise.
race.
No, he's talking about the race. Hunter, you want to take a stab at that?
If I have to, I'd say probably maybe top 7.
Oh, I would say higher than
Top
that.
7. I think he's
gonna finish
I
second.
think he's very strategic.
No, he won't finish that high.
He's unrestricted, and there's 2 races left after this. If he wins, he's gonna be restricted for Le Mans. He's not gonna do that.
Wait, he's not restricted?
He's not restricted anymore.
No, alright, I'll change my mind then. Probably, I'd go Bull and unpole then. And race to win, so.
Okay, Bullen pole.
You
think he'll win?
Really? You think he'll take the win?
That hurt him for Le Mans.
Yeah, but, I mean, if you look at
Well,
Well,
last
he
year...
does have a ridiculous gap here in points, though.
I mean, let's think about it. He had pole last year with a 10%. I mean, what's going to stop him from doing that again?
But what we're saying is finishing position for the race, power restriction wise. Is it smart? Is it a smart decision for him to actually go for the win, or where do you think he's going to finish?
I think he's gonna finish second.
I think he's got the points to do whatever he wants, but a second probably.
Because then he only gets 5%.
I think
and then I'll go way after Italy.
you gotta imagine he's gonna be on the podium. The question is which step, right? And it's either gonna be one or two. Bulin finishes where Bulin wants to finish, and it's gonna be. He really does.
It's
I mean,
sad.
Sonoma kind of the only exception
He
to
did
that,
double
right?
pit
I mean,
Motegi.
he wanted to finish fourth there.
Yeah, which
that's
is
true.
impressive.
He wanted to finish fourth at Sonoma, and ended up sixth. You know, I mean, that's not so bad, and he's got, kind of a buffer to be able to do that. I think he'll either win this race, just like you guys said, and his times in the winter test are so fast above everybody else that it's not going to matter. His only competition then is going to be the other Bentley in flames. So that's going to be the big question mark. Does he think he's got enough to win the finale against In Flames? Is he going to do that, or will he go second here to get 5% for Mugello and then unrestricted for the finale?
So we pretty much know from right now he's not going to podium at Mugello. We know that for a fact. We know nobody that's going to be contending for the championship in Flames. All the big guys that have the powerful cars, they're probably not going to finish on the podium. But that's next podcast, so we're going to try and stay out of that.
All right. Do we have any final thoughts on Nurburgring Grand Prix, Derek?
I'm going to do mine and Brad's.
Wow.
Mine is pay attention to what you're doing in the hairpin and the Schumacher S's. That section of the track can make or break your entire lap. Turn 8, turn 9 and 10, the Schumacher S's. If you screw up the Schumacher S's, if you enter weird, it will kick you out off the rumble strip and off the track. That could ruin a race for you. So you have to be careful through that section of the track. And if you take the hairpin wrong, you can late brake and slide off the track, and or there are some weird lines through that corner to take. Like you come in really deep into the corner, you brake very late, and you kind of swing it way wide, and you don't apex in the middle of the corner where you think you apex very late on the exit of the corner and come out. There have been certain cars that show speed with that corner type, and there are cars that are very high grip that take the corner with the normal line and go through. And there are some of the big cars. I mean, who knows with the Bentley? I mean, I'm pretty sure they've tuned it to where they could take the Schumacher S's with either barely a little bit of a let off or basically full throttle. But you're going to see the high grip cars take that full throttle and gain a lot of speed going into 11, but I think you're going to see the power cars kind of lose some time there. But that's really the only part of the track, other than maybe the first 4 turns, where you're really going to see them kind of on their knees a little bit, bowing down to the high grip gods. But I'm going to do Brad's real quick. Brad's keys are going to be practice, practice, practice.
Talking about practice, man.
I guess then I don't have to say anything there. Then.
Right. Do you have anything else to add to that? Maybe one more practice?
Not practice? Can I do that?
No, that's contradicting your values.
Not practice, just show up and you'll win.
Yeah, that's my mentality
is
every
Brad's
week.
Advice here.
Like, you know what? I'll toss in a couple laps for qualifying, then I'll just stop everybody out during the race.
Right. Hunter, what are your final thoughts on the Nurburgring Grand Prix and secrets to success here?
I'm gonna have to say turn 1 is probably the biggest, just because a lot of people are gonna want to try and overtake there, but it's such a tricky corner because of how deep people try and break into, and then setting yourself up for the second and third corner, I think, is probably where we're gonna maybe see the most overtaking happen besides probably 16. But secrets to success, take turn 8, because that's pretty tough, I think.
This is an interesting track, isn't it? Because it is kind of a grip layout, but it's not really definable like that, is it? It's got a good balance of you got to be inch perfect in certain corners, and then you've got other corners that you've got a lot of lines you can take through them and be pretty much as fast as the optimum line. So in race, it's going to be really interesting because you can pass at this track. It does happen. It's not difficult like Sonoma. There's several places that you can make an overtake happen, and there's quite a bit of runoff. The only danger area there is in the 14-15. There's that wall that if you cut it too hard, you're going to hit that wall. And we have seen that in races before. People retired out because they just cut too much of 14, hit the wall, and their race is done.
I feel like
The
4 is
other
the
one
same
we
sort
saw
of
was
corner 4 because the walls were close there. But I mean, it's slow enough to where you won't get crap damage.
right, and it is banked, so it kind of pushes you out. Even if you're trying to hit the wall, it's kind of difficult to do unless you really turn in on it. But yeah, I think Hunter's right. After turn 4, you're going to see a lot of overtaking as people take that corner wrong, and can't put the power down. The people that get the right line out of there are going to pass them down into turn 6, which is another kind of a high speed sector there. But yeah, the 14-15 complex. If you're losing time, like a significant chunk, chances are you're either not taking turns 9 and 10 at full throttle, or you're not doing 14-15 as flat as you should be. That sector right there, see if you can team up with somebody that's either faster than you, or if you're just a spectator watching this stuff, it's going to be interesting to see what that pole lap looks like through 14-15 there. It's incredibly hair-raising for the truly fastest times, because you're just just really, really close to hitting that wall and going dirty there, and on the other side, on exit, getting the tail end to kick out. So I'm excited for what this race is going to bring in, because this is a really, really cool track and isn't really known for wreck outs or damage, other than that wall, like I said, usually claims one driver. But this track isn't known for massive amounts of damage. It's a really fun track
the best race
to
in
watch
the schedule.
drivers.
It's usually, like, action-wise, it's usually the best in the schedule. Usually we get to it and we talk about it, it's like, wow, that was a great race last year.
Yeah, last year I was going to say, I mean, perfect example, plenty of action on track, and plenty of people head-to-head against each other, especially early on, because people want to move up the field.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys. Well, that's all we have for this week. We'll leave you with that. We look forward to the German Grand Prix this weekend, and we're already, we're just getting into qualifying. Open up tonight as we record this. So we look forward to seeing some of that qualifying commentary up on our Facebook. If you're not familiar with that, hop on our Facebook, like us there. Hop over to YouTube and subscribe if you haven't already.
Okay.
And guys, we'll see you again in 2 weeks actually, it's going to be longer than that, isn't it? For after German Grand Prix. We should probably talk about this really quick. It looks like the way that it's going, it looks like we're going to have the Italian Grand Prix pushed back to June 2nd, and then the finale then on June 16th. So this is going to be like a 3-week or almost a month break there between the German Grand Prix and the Italian Grand Prix. And what I expect is that most teams are going to use that time to prep for the finale there, not so much spend all that time on prep for the Italian GP in the second to the last race. But anyway, we'll see you then in a couple weeks' time when we're talking about the Italian Grand Prix. Thanks for listening, guys.
Thanks for having me.
Girls.
Bye. Hey, Derek, you want to hear my Ryan impression?
Sure. God dang it, Brad.
Lollercopters.